And this week we are studying the kingdom principle of divine placement. Yes, and I prayed that kingdom principle this morning, the kingdom principle of divine placement. And our scripture is found in Psalm 139 and verse number 7. And I got to read it all the way to verse number 12. That's Psalm 139, verses 7 through verse 12. And this morning, I'm reading from the King, not the King James, but the New Interesting Versions, they would call it, the NIV. And it says, "Where can I go from your spirit? Where can I flee from your presence? If I go up to the heavens, you are there. If I make my bed in the depths, you are there. If I rise on the wings of the dawn, if I settle on the far side of the sea, even there your hand will guide me. Your right hand will hold me fast. If I say, surely the darkness will hide me, and the light become night around me, even the darkness will not be dark to you. The night will shine like the day, for darkness is as light to you." And today we're talking about the kingdom principle of divine placement. And our subject today is that God made places before God made people. Can I say that again? That God made places before God made people. And this week we're going to be looking at the Garden of Eden. We're going to walk through the Garden of Eden. Give me a thumbs up, give me a high five, give me a heart if you're familiar with the wonderful story of the Garden of Eden in Genesis. Genesis is the book of beginnings, and we're going to walk through that book this week. We're going to walk through Genesis. We're going to journey through Genesis, and we're going to look at the principle of divine placement through the eyes of being in the Garden of Eden, through the eyes of Adam and Eve. We're going to look at the Garden of Eden, and we're going to see that as a divine placement, that they were divinely placed in the Garden of Eden. But it is important that as we understand this kingdom principle of divine placement, that we understand that God always makes places before God makes people. If you look at that story of the Garden of Eden, God made the Garden of Eden first, and then he placed the man or the man and the woman in the garden, but the garden was made first. The place was made first, which means that places are important. And God is thinking about places where people can be. Can I say that again? That God is always thinking about places where people can be, because God made places before God made people. And whenever you are going to a place, it is already prepared for you. Jesus said, "I go to prepare a place for you," which means that God is not going to have you in a place that is not prepared for you. God always makes the place before the people, and then God puts the people in the place where they need to be. So I just rest in the consciousness of the principle of divine placement, that wherever I am is where I'm supposed to be, and God made this place for me to be here ahead of time. You know, God put me here before a purpose. There's a reason why I am here. And so there's not no accident, it's no incidents, it's no coincidence, but I'm exactly where I'm supposed to be in every area of my life. I'm exactly where I'm supposed to be spiritually. I'm exactly where I'm supposed to be mentally. I'm exactly where I'm supposed to be emotionally. I'm exactly where I'm supposed to be physically. I'm exactly where I'm supposed to be geographically. I'm exactly where I'm supposed to be educationally. I'm exactly where I'm supposed to be vocationally. I'm exactly where I'm supposed to be socially. I'm exactly where I'm supposed to be financially. And I could go and go and go on with all these leads, but whatever lead you can come up with, you are exactly where you are supposed to be in every lead of your life. Give me a thumbs up, give me some high fives, give me some hearts if you really embrace that idea, if you understand that, if you accept the kingdom principle of divine placement. I'm exactly where I'm supposed to be. I can't be where I'm not. I can only be where I am. So since I'm here, I show up fully present, open and ready to receive all the good, all the lessons, and all the blessings that God planted. When God made the place, God planted lessons and blessings in that place for me. So instead of trying to get out of the place, instead of trying to run from the place, instead of trying to escape the place, I embrace exactly where I am, knowing that where I am is perfect and I am supposed to be here. I'm exactly where I am supposed to be. All right. So today, as we look at this, that God made place before people, as we're looking at this Genesis story, pulley point number one is that this idea is that God is here. That's what the psalmist David is saying. He's saying you can't get away from God's presence, that God is omnipresence, that God is all the presence that there is, that there is no presence outside of God, that God is all the presence that there is. So wherever I am placed, the presence is there. God is there. And I know people talk about God moved here and God, oh child, that was a mighty move of God. Well, where is God going to move? God is everywhere evenly present. Oh, it was a mighty move of God. God sure moved today. God does not move. What God does is God manifests. But God's presence is already everywhere. So God has no need to move. God is already there. You don't have to send God anywhere. God is not an errand boy. He don't need to be sent to the hospitals or to the prisons or to foreign countries. God is everywhere evenly present, spirit of absolute good. God is omnipresence. God is all the presence that there is. There is no presence outside of God. And David realized that. He said, I can't get away from this presence of God. Wherever I go, God is there. He said, if I go to and make my bed in hell, guess what? God is there. If I take the wings of the morning and go to the high heavens, God is there. If I go to the deep sea, God is there. That everywhere I am, God is. And so that is omnipresence, that God is all the presence that there is. You can't get away from God's presence. You can't run from God's presence. You can't hide from God's presence. That wherever you are, physically, mentally, emotionally, geographically, financially, God is right where you are. Come on, let's just breathe that divine idea in, that God is right where I am. Whew, thank you, God. The omnipresence of God. So God is here. God is here. God is right where you are. And God promised to never leave you nor forsake you, but to be with you always, even to the end of the earth. Whew, through every area of my life. He said, when you go through the water, guess what? I'm with you. When you go through the fire, I'm with you. When you go through the flood, I am with you. That God is always there. That's what Jehovah Shammah means. The God who is there. God is always there because God is the everywhere evenly present spirit of absolute good, omnipresence. And when you recognize that the presence of God is right where you are, you realize that there is no emptiness in God's presence, that there is no lack in God's presence, that there are no limitations in God's presence, that there are no vacancies in God's presence, that there are no voids in God's presence. In God's presence, there is only fullness, the fullness of joy, the fullness of love, the fullness of peace, the fullness of health, the fullness of harmony in relationships, the fullness of wealth. Whatever you need or whatever you desire, its fullness is in the presence of God. So God is already there. You need to just recognize, like David was doing in Psalm 139, you just need to recognize that God is here. But God is already there. It's you that has not yet recognized the presence of God right where you are. It is you that has not actualized the presence of God right where you are. But God is there, has always been there, always going to be there, and is never going to leave there because God is the everywhere, evenly present spirit of absolute good. God is no more here than he is there. God is everywhere, evenly present. So what happens is God manifests God's presence, and you begin to see that God is here. But God was there all the time. You begin to hear in that place and know that God is here. You begin to feel the presence of God and know that God is here. But God has always been there. Hallelujah. God is right where you are, in the midst of it. People say, well, where's God at in this? Right in the midst of it. God is there. He says, I am a present help Where's God in the midst of coronavirus and in the midst of COVID-19? God is right there in the midst of it. Yes, God is right there in the midst of it. He says, I am a present help in the time of trouble. God is right there with you where you are. God is here. So pulley point number one, I know there was a lot on pulley point number one, is the omnipresence of God. God is omnipresence. God is all, and so when you recognize the presence of God, it makes your presence more powerful. It makes your presence more potent. It makes you, so therefore, because God is the everywhere evenly present spirit of absolute good, when I recognize that that presence is in me, that that presence is flowing through me, that that presence is functioning as me, then I show up to wherever place I am. And I'm fully present. I'm not distracted. I'm not wishing I was somewhere else. I'm not daydreaming and hoping and fantasizing about somewhere else. I'm exactly where I'm supposed to be. And I show up fully present, exactly where I am. I'm paying attention to the conversation. I'm fully present. I'm here. Told all of me. I bring all of me to the table. I bring all of me to the situation because that presence of God is going to flow through me right where I am. And so bloom where you are planted and allow God to manifest God's self, God's presence and power through you right where you are. All right? Pulley point number one is the omnipresence of God. That God is the everywhere evenly present spirit of absolute good. So therefore, pulley point number two, there are no God-forsaken places. People say, well, that's a God-forsaken place. That city is a God-forsaken city. That's a sinful city, and that's a horrible place. It can't be because God is there. There are no God-forsaken places. There are no evil, wicked places. And people talk about, well, you know, they're territorial demons and stuff that are in certain regions. Well, God is in that region. God is in that city. God is in that state. God is in that country. Come on, Bishop Hector. God is in that continent. God is in that community. God is everywhere there. So it's you that is seeing it as a God-forsaken place. It is you that is seeing it as an evil, as a wicked place. But when you realize that God is here, regardless of what people are doing, regardless of what's going on, God is right here in the midst of this place. There is no spot where God is not. There is no God-forsaken place. That God is everywhere. He even said that God was in hell. He said, if I make my bed in hell, God is in hell. So whether you're creating a heaven in your life and taking the wings of the morning and flying high, God is there, or whether you are descending in lower levels of consciousness, God is there, right there. That's a song that says, God is here. I think it's Martha Manuzzi that says that song, that God is here. That God is here. God is everywhere. There is no spot where God is not. And God is not any more there than God is here. God is everywhere evenly present. So when you understand the principle of kingdom placement, divine placement, it calls you to be aware that right where I am, God is here. That's why Peter said it is good for us to be here, because he recognized that God was right where they were. In the hurt and the pain, God is there. In the disappointment and the disillusionment, God is there. In the test and the trial and the tribulation and the persecution and the heartache and the pain and the happy times, the sad times, God is right there. It is a matter of you recognizing the presence of God in there and knowing that God is here. If God can be in hell, then you know God is in your situation. If God is in hell in the deepest part of the sea, then you know that God is right where you are. So pulley point number one is the omnipresence of God, that God is the everywhere evenly present spirit of absolute truth. God is here. All right. Pulley point number two, there is no spot where God is not. There are no God-forsaken places. That God is not only here, but God is everywhere. All right. So pulley point number one, God is here, right wherever you are. God is. I'm going to make it real simple. Pulley point number one, God is here, right where you are. Wherever your feet are, God is here. Pulley point number two, not only is God here, God is everywhere. There are no God-forsaken places. There are no spots where God is not. God is here. And pulley point number two, God is everywhere. Pulley point number three, is that wherever you are, God is. That people think that some people believe that God is in heaven, like that God is only outside of you. Some people believe that God is only inside of you. But I'm telling you, God is in you. God flows through you. God functions as you. God is above you. God is beside you. God is beneath you. God is behind you. God is in front of you. God, any direction that you can turn and go to, God is there. And wherever you are, pulley point number 3, wherever you are, God is. You carry that presence, and even when you don't feel like God, even though you know that God is in a place, when you don't feel like God is in the place, and you haven't seen the manifested presence of God in that place, pulley point number 3, wherever I am, God is. So the fact that I am there, I know that God is there because God is in me. And I'm able to magnify that presence of God that is in me and allow it to permeate the environment. When I'm aware of the presence of God that is in me, I allow it to change the climate. I begin to set the atmosphere. When I recognize that God's presence is inside of me, that God's presence is me, that I am the presence of God. When I recognize that I set tones, I set atmosphere, I change climate, I establish environments. When I recognize that God is in me, so wherever I am, God is. Wherever I am, God is. That there is no separation between you and God. You say, well, how do you know that God is everywhere I am? I've been to the bar, and let me tell you, God was in the bar. God was in the club. We say God's in the crack house, in the White House, wherever it is, in your house, in the schoolhouse, wherever you are, God is. And wherever you have been, God was there while you were there. And God is still there even after you left there. That God is always there. That there is no spot where God is not. And wherever you are, God is. And if you don't feel like, if you're not feeling God, then go within. And know that God is there because you are there, and God is that breath of life that is causing your lungs to expand and to contract. So God has to be in that place because you're breathing, because there's oxygen in that place. God is in that place. God is nigh you, even in your mouth, just as close as your breath. So whenever you're feeling like God is not somewhere, just take a deep conscious breath. Become aware of that breath and know that God is right there in you, through you, as you, in that place wherever you are. God is in depression. God is in anxiety. God is in suicide. God is in, I can keep going on and on. You can't come up with a condition that God is not in. You can't come up with a circumstance that God is not in. God is in it all. That you cannot separate God, the creature, from the creation. You cannot separate the creator from the creation. God is one. So wherever I am, God is, and I can access that presence. I only need to realize it. I only need to acknowledge it and begin to manifest it right where I am. Wherever I am, God is. And so it's this prayer that we used to say in unity, and I'm going to close out with this prayer because it lets you know that this is in you, that it's not just outside of you, but it's also inside of you. And so you can be confident, you can be assured that wherever you are, God is. Will you pray this prayer with me? Come on, let's just take a moment to be still and just recognize that God is here, God is there, and wherever I am, God is. Those are your 3 points. God is here, God is everywhere, and wherever I am, God is. Those are your 3 points for today. God is here, and that God made this place where I am before he even made me. And so we're going to go within and we're going to close with this prayer. And I love it because it reminds me that God is right where I am. The light of God surrounds us. I am the light of God. The love of God enfolds us. I am the love of God. The power of God protects us. I am the power of God. The presence of God watches over us. I am the presence of God. And I am grateful. I am so grateful that wherever I am, I'm going to say that again. And I am grateful. I am so grateful that wherever I am, God is. And all is well all the time. When I recognize that wherever I am, God is, I know the truth that all is well all the time. It is in the name and through the power and in the consciousness of Christ Jesus that it is so, and so it is, and so I let it be. Amen and amen.